In my previous life, my own sister arranged for me to marry a man who was rough around the edges, poor, and didn't seem to have much going for him. His name was Mark. But over the next 10 years, something unexpected happened. Mark became known as a stock market genius, a billionaire, and I found myself living a life of incredible luxury because of it. Then I was reborn. Suddenly, I was young again, back before any of that happened. This time, my sister Khloe couldn't wait to get close to Mark. She did everything she could to position herself to marry him instead. What she didn't understand, however, was that the real financial talent wasn't Mark at all. It was me. Her chosen man knew nothing about the market. He was merely a figurehead I had placed in the public eye. When I found myself living again, I was 17, back in a dimly lit sports equipment storage room at school. A heavy breathing sound came from nearby. It was Mark, my ex-husband from that other life. In a terrifying rush, he tore at the buttons on my shirt, pressing his face against my neck like someone possessed. I felt completely powerless, my body trembling uncontrollably. Amidst the confusion and fear, the realization hit me. Time had reversed. I was 17 years old again, reliving the very day my sister Khloe had drugged me. Just as Mark was about to rip my shirt off entirely, the door to the equipment room burst open. Someone hurried inside. It was Khloe. She looked like she had run a long distance, her hair plastered to her sweaty forehead. Ignoring her appearance, she threw her arms around Mark, holding him tightly. "Mark," she pleaded, "don't be with her. You belong to me." In that instant, everything became clear. Khloe and I had both been reborn. In our past life, Khloe had been infatuated with the most popular boy in school, but he had written a love letter to me, not her. Consumed by jealousy, Khloe drugged me and orchestrated events so that I was forced to marry the person considered the biggest loser in school, Mark. A decade passed, and Mark somehow transformed into the investment tycoon known only as Q God, making me, his wife, incredibly wealthy and admired. I spent my days carrying expensive designer bags and driving a luxury car worth millions. Everyone envied my position. Sarah really chose well, they'd say. She saw Mark's potential when he had nothing, and now look at her life. Meanwhile, Khloe's husband, Ethan, who came from a rich family, had lost everything. He was constantly dodging creditors and would even try to flatter Mark, asking for investment tips. Whenever Khloe saw me, her eyes burned with a mixture of intense jealousy and deep regret she couldn't hide. I remember one family gathering vividly. Mark excused himself to use the restroom, and I saw Khloe follow him discreetly. I positioned myself in the shadows nearby, listening through the thin wall. Khloe was crying, her words slurred from drinking too much. "Mark, you liked me back then," she sobbed, trying to embrace and kiss him. Mark gasped and pushed her away forcefully. "That was over 10 years ago," he said stiffly. Khloe stumbled and fell, still weeping. "Don't you remember? You brought me breakfast every day, gave me rides home. You told me I'd always be your goddess and you'd do anything I asked. Mark, you were supposed to be mine." Mark ignored her pleas, quickly straightening the clothes she had disarranged, and hurried out as if escaping something unpleasant. Khloe seemed utterly defeated, slumping against the cold floor. I opened the restroom door and looked down at her. "Stop sitting there," I told her coolly. "Anyone who knows the situation might think you failed to seduce my husband. Anyone who doesn't might think you're practicing for a sad high school play." Khloe looked up sharply, her eyes filled with hatred. "Why you, Sarah? What makes you so special? Why do you get the wealthy husband?" I pulled my hand away from her grasp. "Let's be clear, Khloe," I said coldly. "I ended up with Mark because of you. Now that he's successful, you regret it? It's too bad because it's too late." Khloe stared at me, then suddenly laughed, a harsh, vicious sound. "Sarah, you're wrong. It's not too late." At the time, I didn't grasp her meaning. But now, looking down at my own 17-year-old body, I understood. Khloe must have somehow triggered this journey back in time, bringing us both back to this age. Living life over again, she intended to claim the man and the fortune she believed should have been hers. Back in the present, in the sports equipment room, Mark was still breathing heavily, his face flushed with the effects of the drug. He looked towards me, mumbling, "I feel terrible." Khloe forcefully turned his head towards her. Mark, I love you, she declared, kissing him passionately. Soon they were lost in their embrace. Watching them from a short distance, I struggled to my feet, carefully buttoned my shirt, and stumbled out of the room. Relief washed over me. Thank goodness. Thank you, Khloe. I never imagined I could escape that horrible night and get a fresh start. In my past life, Khloe had drugged both my drink and Mark's, locked us in here together, and then brought our parents and neighbors to catch us. Seeing Mark and me in a compromising state, my parents felt deeply shamed. Convinced no respectable man would ever want me after this scandal, they forced me to marry Mark. When I initially refused, they confined me at home, withheld food and water, and beat me regularly. Khloe would stand by crying crocodile tears, pleading, "Just marry Mark. Otherwise, for the family's reputation, they might have to beat you to death." Eventually, weakened and close to death, I was forced into the marriage. Even though immense wealth came later, the trauma of that event cast a long shadow over my life. Now, finally, I had escaped that shadow. That evening at dinner, Khloe returned home, her face glowing with excitement. She eagerly announced to our parents that she wanted to marry Mark. They were so stunned they dropped their chopsticks. "Khloe, why?" Mom asked incredulously. "Mark keeps failing his classes. He's nearly 20 and still repeating grades. How is he possibly good enough for you?" Khloe just shook her head, insistent. "Mom, Dad, I promise you, Mark is just having a hard time right now. He's going to have an amazing future." Our parents remained skeptical and tried to reason with her. Mom even began to cry. Finally, losing patience, Khloe shouted, "It's no use trying to stop me. I've already given myself to Mark." She touched her stomach meaningfully. "I might even be pregnant with his child." Our parents were utterly speechless. Seeing their shocked and despairing faces, Khloe adopted a calm smile. She sat down between them, putting her arms around their shoulders comfortingly. "Mom, Dad, you have to trust your daughter's intuition," she began. "Remember when I told Dad not to invest in that business venture? And when I warned Mom against going to that cheap clinic on the east side for her treatments? Well, the man Dad was going to partner with just skipped town with everyone's money, and that clinic had a major malpractice incident reported just last week. See? Everything I predict comes true. People have called me a lucky star since I was little, don't you remember?" As Khloe spoke, her parents' expressions began to soften. She pressed her advantage. "So you have to trust my judgment when it comes to men, too. Mark is destined for great wealth. We're going to have a wonderful life together." Mom was the first to show signs of wavering. "Really?" Khloe laughed reassuringly. "Of course." Dad, too, started to come around. He began to worry about a different aspect. "If Mark does become rich, will he treat you badly?" Khloe smiled serenely. "No way. Mark is the type who absolutely spoils his wife." I recalled how in our past life, after Mark's identity as Q God became public, countless beautiful young women pursued him. But he remained devoted only to me, his original wife. He'd open car doors for me, serve me food at meals, and always deferred to my wishes. In contrast, Khloe's husband, Ethan, even when deeply in debt, couldn't keep his eyes off younger women. It was no wonder Khloe had been so consumed with jealousy. Listening to Khloe praise Mark to our parents, I continued eating my meal in silence, pretending I couldn't hear their conversation. But even though I ignored her, Khloe wasn't finished trying to provoke me. Later that night, she barged into my room without knocking. She found me focused on my homework and sneered, "Sarah, don't think I don't know what you're up to. You act all quiet and studious, but secretly you're plotting how to steal Mark away from me, aren't you?" Honestly, my sister's mindset was almost laughable. It was slightly embarrassing to be related to her, but I was content to let her believe whatever she wanted. If her attention was fully occupied by Mark, she wouldn't interfere with my truly important plans. As she spoke, Khloe moved closer. She grabbed my chin, forcing me to look at the mirror on the wall beside us. "You might as well give up now," she said contemptuously. "Just look at yourself. How could you possibly compete with me?" Reflected in the mirror was a thin, sallow-skinned girl wearing thick glasses and a faded, ill-fitting school uniform. Beside her stood Khloe, radiant with fair skin, shiny black hair, and dressed in a fashionable new outfit. She was naturally striking, the kind of girl who turned heads on the street. I wasn't as conventionally pretty as Khloe. Furthermore, our parents had always shown blatant favoritism, giving Khloe the best food and clothes, while I was often left undernourished and looking somewhat frail. The contrast between us in the mirror was stark. "Look at you," Khloe continued, clearly enjoying herself, perhaps venting frustrations held over from her previous life. "Do you honestly think any man would be interested in you? Mark used to follow me around like a puppy. He only married you because he couldn't have me. This time, I won't give you that chance. As soon as I'm old enough, I'll marry him. When he becomes Q God, you won't stand a chance. Half of all that wealth will be mine." Her eyes shone with greedy anticipation. Indeed, at his peak, the figure known as Q God controlled assets worth billions. Divorcing him could potentially net her half, more than enough to live comfortably and pursue anyone she desired. I twirled the pen in my hand, lowering my head slightly. Khloe probably thought her words had hit their mark, that I was upset, but I bowed my head to hide the smile playing on my lips. "Oh, Khloe, I almost admired how much you underestimate me. Your ingrained arrogance means that even if you lived 1,000 lifetimes, you'd never guess the truth. The real Q God is me." Yes, I was the one who built that fortune from practically nothing, using my intelligence, courage, and a bit of luck. First, I made significant profits in the stock market, and later, I invested heavily in Bitcoin at precisely the right moment, achieving complete financial independence. My username on the investment forums, the one that led to the Q God nickname, was just a random string of letters I'd typed. Many people speculated about my true identity. Knowing I couldn't remain anonymous forever, I strategically placed Mark in the spotlight to act as my public face, my puppet, or perhaps more accurately, my scapegoat. Our world is full of unpredictable changes. Sudden wealth attracts envy, and sudden poverty can bring danger. In those years of our past life, Mark was kidnapped 3 times and physically assaulted by enemies 4 times. I remember one time we visited family, he had just been beaten up and had a broken rib. That was why he grimaced and pushed Khloe away so forcefully when she tried to hug him at that party. Despite enduring all the public scrutiny and attacks, Mark never dared expose the truth. He wouldn't cross me. By playing the role of my puppet, he at least enjoyed a life of luxury. Without me, he would have remained nothing. Looking at the completely oblivious Khloe now, I smiled genuinely. "Khloe," I said softly, "I wish you and Mark a lifetime of happiness together. Go ahead, tie your future to him. I'll just focus on my exams, save money for college, and get as far away from this family as I can." I sincerely meant it. I hoped Mark and Khloe would stay together. However, a few days later, after school, Mark unexpectedly intercepted me. He skidded his bicycle to block my path and let out a cocky whistle. "Sarah, you look really nice today. What's the special occasion?" I instinctively stepped back, feeling uneasy. I knew Mark's true character all too well. He was fundamentally unpleasant. In his mind, whatever he couldn't easily obtain became the most desirable. In our last life, that object of desire had been Khloe. Now it seemed it was me. Clenching my teeth, I tried to walk around him. "I'm going to work," I said curtly. "Let me pass." I had recently started working part-time at a local supermarket, helping at the cash register to save some money for myself. The owner was a kind man. Seeing that my school uniform was too small and worn out, he had given me some clothes his own daughter had outgrown, a light blue cardigan and a white skirt. These clothes did make me look considerably better than usual, and apparently, Mark had noticed. Right now, he was approaching me with a sly grin. "Work? What kind of work? Hey, I've got some work for you too, if you're interested." He leered, moving closer. I fought back a wave of nausea, quietly reaching into my bag for the small pair of scissors I carried for self-defense. But before I could pull them out, someone rushed out from a nearby side street. It was Khloe. She shoved me aside forcefully and positioned herself protectively in front of Mark. Sarah, why are you always bothering Mark? She demanded loudly, pointing her finger right at my face. Are you trying to seduce my fiancé? Have you no shame? Mark, standing slightly behind her, rubbed his nose and added fuel to the fire. I just ran into Sarah while I was riding my bike and she wouldn't let me leave. Hearing this, Khloe became even angrier. Sarah, are you still trying? Look at yourself. Do you really think you're good enough for Mark? I'm definitely marrying him. If you dare try to seduce him again, I'll tell Mom and Dad to sell you off to some remote mountain village. With that, she grabbed Mark's arm and pulled him away. Clearly, though, she still felt uneasy about me. That evening, when I returned home from work, I found my room had been completely turned upside down. The small tin box where I kept my hard-earned savings lay open on the floor. All the money I had diligently saved from my supermarket job was gone. Khloe stood there holding the cash, a smug look on her face. Waving the bills in one hand, she pointed at my nose with the other, her long fingernails almost touching my skin. This is the secret stash of money Sarah's been hiding, she announced triumphantly. She hasn't been working at all. She's been sleeping with the supermarket owner. I saw him give her money and buy her these new clothes. She gestured disdainfully at the cardigan and skirt I was wearing. Now everyone in the neighborhood probably knows our family has a mistress in it. Before I could even form a response, my father, his face grim, rushed over and slapped me hard across the face. My mother stood beside him, crying and wailing. People always said this child was bad luck. I took so many pills to try and get rid of her before she was born, and I still couldn't. Now look, she's brought disgrace upon our entire family. That was typical of my parents. They always unconditionally sided with Khloe. In their eyes, Khloe could do no wrong. A fortune teller had labeled me unlucky before I was even born, and shortly after my birth, Dad's business had failed. Events they forever linked to me, so no matter what I did, it was perceived as wrong. Then, Dad snatched all my savings from Khloe and started beating me with his belt. Khloe watched with a satisfied smile, her tone deceptively sympathetic as she added her manipulative words. Sarah, don't blame Dad for hitting you so hard. If he doesn't teach you a lesson, you'll never learn. Girls need to respect themselves. Don't you ever earn that kind of dirty money again. The pain became overwhelming, and I eventually lost consciousness. When I came to, I was lying in the dirt yard outside our house. My parents had taken Khloe shopping. Since Khloe was supposedly getting engaged soon, they were buying her a nice dress. I had lost all my savings, and there wasn't even any basic first aid medicine in the house. Struggling to my feet, I stumbled towards the yard gate. Next door lived my cousin and his wife, Maya. Only Maya was outside doing laundry. Seeing my battered state, barely able to speak, she was horrified. Sarah? Oh my goodness, what happened to you? Maya dropped the clothes she was holding and rushed over to help me up, her hands becoming smeared with blood from my injuries. Hold on. I'll get some medicine for you. Lying on the ground, I looked up at the night sky. The moon shone brightly, but its light couldn't reach every dark corner of the world. Maya gently cleaned and applied medicine to my wounds. How could your parents be so cruel? You're their own daughter, after all, she lamented, wiping tears from her eyes. She was a kind-hearted woman who had endured a difficult life herself. Barely literate, she'd been forced to leave school after the 3rd grade to work at home. Later, her father essentially sold her to my cousin to gather money for her brother's bride price. Now, as she tenderly treated my injuries, I lightly touched her arm, noticing the faint scars there as well. My cousin often hit her. In my previous life, Maya died before I even turned 20. After a long silence, I asked her quietly, "Do you have any savings?" She hesitated, then sighed. "I do, about $2,000. Why?" "I'm not asking to borrow it for school," I explained softly. "I want to help you earn more money. I can turn your $2,000 into $20,000, maybe even $200,000. She laughed gently, clearly not believing me, and spoke as if comforting a child. "You take the $2,000 for your school expenses, Sarah. You can pay me back whenever you graduate. We're family, no need to worry about interest." I remained silent, gazing up at the vast, dark sky. In my last life, I had returned too late to help her. This time, I was determined to change her fate, and my own. Khloe, you are so foolish. Given the incredible chance to relive your life, all you can fixate on is securing a man. Meanwhile, my mind is filled with stock codes and market opportunities. Do you even realize the advantage you've inadvertently handed me? Early Monday morning, I took the money Maya had given me and went to school. My plan was to sneak out during the long morning break and go to the nearest securities firm to open an investment account. I never expected that just as I rode my bicycle out of the school gate and down the street, a figure would suddenly jump out from an alley directly in my path. The person swung a heavy wooden stick, studded with nails, straight at me. I swerved sharply to avoid being hit, lost my balance, and crashed onto the pavement. Ignoring the jolt of pain, I quickly clutched my backpack, which held the precious money Maya had entrusted to me. Standing over me was a pair of expensive, brand-new athletic shoes. Looking up, I saw a round, somewhat chubby face sneering down at me with malicious intent. I recognized him immediately. It was Ethan, Khloe's husband from her previous life. Ethan had been devotedly trailing after Khloe since middle school. He was the son of a wealthy businessman, and while the rest of us wore drab uniforms and cheap knockoffs, Ethan was already knowledgeable about foreign luxury brands. He had pursued Khloe relentlessly for years. Khloe didn't particularly like his appearance, but couldn't resist the allure of his family's wealth. So she kept him dangling, using him as a backup option throughout her teenage years. Eventually, when she got older and hadn't found anyone she considered better, she married him. Little did she know that shortly after their wedding, Ethan's family business would collapse, dragging Khloe, who had invested her own money with them, down as well. They ended up deeply in debt, unable to even afford basic necessities. No matter how pathetic Ethan might become in the future, right now, he was still the arrogant, wealthy young man whom nobody dared to cross. So, clutching my backpack tightly, I cautiously edged backward, wanting to avoid a direct confrontation. But Ethan wasn't going to let me go easily. He kicked dirt towards my face with the toe of his shoe and sneered. Khloe always said her sister was a sneaky little troublemaker. Caught you red-handed sneaking out of school. Where do you think you're going? Just going to buy some things, I whispered, trying to appear non-threatening. Buying things? Ethan laughed harshly. His laughter abruptly stopped as he snatched my backpack away. He turned it upside down, dumping its contents onto the dusty ground. Pencils, notebooks, and textbooks scattered everywhere. An envelope filled with cash fell out. I lunged for it, but Ethan was faster. He scooped up the envelope. Wow, so much money? He waved the bills tauntingly. What are you buying with this? Wedding favors for your sister and me? He stuffed the envelope into his own pocket and spoke coldly. Don't think I don't know what's going on. Khloe told me everything. You're greedy and jealous of her, so you became someone's mistress to earn money for fancy clothes. Did you steal this money, or did you cheat someone for it? I'm going to tell Khloe right now. He gave me another shove, sending me stumbling back against a grimy wall. I coughed from the dust, but as I did, my mind suddenly cleared. Ethan following me, confronting me like this, he was definitely acting on Khloe's instructions. We had both been reborn. Even though Khloe had successfully claimed Mark this time, she clearly still didn't trust me and had sent Ethan to tail me. But that wasn't the most important realization. The crucial piece of information was what Ethan had just accidentally revealed. Wedding favors for your sister and me. I couldn't help but burst out laughing. Perfect. Ethan had no idea that my sister was already involved with Mark. It made sense, though. To Khloe, Ethan was still a valuable asset, someone she could manipulate. If she had told Ethan that she was planning to get engaged to someone else entirely, he certainly wouldn't be so obediently following her orders now. Ethan was about to leave, but he noticed my smile. He frowned, perplexed. What are you laughing at? My smile widened. I'm just so happy for my sister, I said sweetly. You love her so much and always protect her. I'm going to have such a wonderful brother-in-law in the future. I really hope you two get married very soon. Ethan clearly liked hearing this. His tense expression relaxed slightly, but he still looked at me with suspicion. Trying to say nice things now? Hoping I'll let you go? You don't need to let me go, I replied, standing up and dusting myself off calmly. I haven't done anything wrong. This money is from my cousin-in-law, Maya. She heard about Khloe's happy news and asked me to buy some engagement gifts for her. Ethan's expression shifted again. He frowned deeply. What happy news? Feigning confusion, I tilted my head. Oh, I don't know the details, but I overheard my parents talking. They plan to arrange an engagement for Khloe before she leaves for college. You know how it is in our town. Everyone knows each other. They think it's better she settles down with someone local rather than risk being tricked by some bad guy in a big city. I watched Ethan's reaction closely, then chuckled lightly. You silly goose, you still don't get it? Ethan looked completely bewildered. Get what? Chloe's engagement. It's definitely going to be with you, I exclaimed, beaming at him. Think about it. Everyone knows how much you like Khloe. My parents always talk about childhood sweethearts being the best match. Among all the boys around here, who could possibly be a better fit for my sister than you? Ethan suddenly looked incredibly pleased, though still a bit uncertain. Then, why hasn't Khloe mentioned anything to me? I leaned in conspiratorially. Khloe is very shy about these things, you know. She must be too embarrassed to bring it up directly, but I bet she'll tell you very soon. Actually, I've seen her going towards the little wooded area behind the school quite often lately. She's probably planning some kind of romantic surprise for you there. Ethan, completely captivated by this idea, asked excitedly, Really? Just go and see for yourself, I suggested innocently. Then I held out my hand. Now, can I have the envelope back, please? I still need to pick out a nice dress for Chloe's engagement gift. Do you think she'd prefer pink or blue? I'll choose based on what you like, brother-in-law. Calling him brother-in-law sealed the deal. Ethan was overjoyed. Without a second thought, he shoved the envelope full of cash back into my hand. Pink! Definitely pink! Then he turned and dashed off towards the school. I guessed he was eager to discover the wonderful surprise Khloe supposedly had waiting for him. I smiled to myself, whistled softly as I retrieved my bike, feeling quite pleased. This surprise, I suspected, would be one Ethan would never forget. I finally reached the securities company office. My cousin-in-law Maya was waiting anxiously outside. It was her first time inside a stock trading hall, and the constantly changing colors and numbers flashing across the large screens were clearly overwhelming her. Sarah, she whispered nervously, can you actually understand all this? I didn't even need to look closely at the screens. Ever since I bought my very first stock in my previous life, the market trends spanning the decade before and the decade after had become permanently etched in my memory. They were unforgettable. Of course, I didn't mention any of this to Maya. I just smiled reassuringly and said, Yes, I understand it. Trust me. Inside the securities company, I happened to see a familiar figure. It was Ethan's father. He was initially busy signing some documents, accompanied by a secretary. But then he received a phone call. His expression changed dramatically, and he rushed out to a black sedan parked at the curb, heading quickly in the direction of our school. I stood near the entrance, silently watching the car drive away until it disappeared from view. Maya, having finished setting up the account, came over to me. What are you looking at? She asked. I glanced up at the sky. Nothing, I replied casually. It just feels like the weather is about to change. And indeed it did. With my helpful suggestion, Ethan eagerly made his way to the small grove behind the school, excited about the surprise Khloe supposedly had for him. Unexpectedly, as soon as he entered the trees, he heard muffled, intimate noises. Investigating further, he discovered his cherished goddess, Khloe, entangled with Mark, a guy Ethan had always considered beneath his notice. This was likely the most profound shock Ethan had experienced in his entire life. By the time he fully processed the scene, the sound of ambulance sirens was already filling the air. Ethan had beaten Mark so severely that he required emergency medical treatment. When I arrived at the hospital later, Mark was conscious but immobilized, wrapped heavily in gauze bandages and lying still on the bed. The scene felt strangely familiar. After all, in my past life, I had often used him as a shield, and he frequently ended up looking just like this after various altercations. Khloe, however, had never witnessed anything like it. She was weeping hysterically beside Mark's bed. Ethan was brought into the hospital room by his father. Initially, his father seemed worried about the legal repercussions for his son and clearly wanted to negotiate a settlement. But the moment Ethan entered the room, he lunged towards Mark like an enraged bull. If it weren't for his father's two quick-thinking secretaries grabbing and restraining him, he might have actually tried to throw Mark out the hospital window. "Ethan, apologize right now," his father commanded urgently. "Apologize for what? I didn't do anything wrong," Ethan panted, struggling against the hold. He pointed furiously at Mark on the bed. "He assaulted Khloe. I beat him up for that." Poor Ethan. As a normal person without the knowledge of rebirth or Khloe's schemes, this was the natural conclusion he would draw upon witnessing that scene. At this moment, Ethan looked hopefully towards Khloe. "Khloe, say something. Tell them. I did it to save you." Ethan's father also saw a potential way out and looked expectantly at Khloe. "Young lady, you were there. You're the witness. Please just tell everyone the truth." For a tense moment, all eyes in the room focused on Khloe. She bit her lip, hesitating for a long time. Finally, blushing deeply, she mumbled softly, We were both willing." Ethan's face went completely pale. "What? Khloe, you can't be serious?" Even though he was encased in plaster, Mark managed a smug grin from the hospital bed. As a low-level thug, he had never, in his entire life, managed to get the upper hand over someone like Ethan, a wealthy young master. Khloe had handed him this victory, and he was reveling in it. "That's right," Mark declared loudly, ignoring the pain from his injuries. "Khloe and I are in love. Ethan intentionally attacked me. He should go to jail for this." Ethan's father's face darkened. He stepped forward, ignoring Mark on the bed, and directed his words towards Khloe, applying pressure. "Young lady, I advise you to think very carefully before you speak again." Ethan's family was powerful and influential in our town. Even my own parents were becoming visibly anxious, quietly urging Khloe, "Wendy, maybe you should reconsider." It was clear Khloe felt intensely conflicted, but she couldn't afford to alienate Mark now. More than that, she felt she had to hold on to him tightly. After all, in her mind, he was the future Q god. Compared to the billions of dollars she envisioned, Ethan's family's current influence seemed trivial. So, she gripped Mark's hand firmly. "There's nothing to think about," she stated resolutely. "Mark and I are in love. Anyone who hurts Mark should face the consequences." Ethan couldn't take it anymore. He violently shook off the secretary's restraining hands, charged forward, and slapped Khloe hard across the face. "Khloe, are you blind?" In the previous life, Ethan's family went bankrupt shortly after their marriage, and he had always been subservient to Khloe. She never respected him. This was the first time this man she held in such contempt had ever dared to strike her. She completely lost control. "Ethan, who do you think you are?" she shrieked, pushing him away roughly. "Just some spoiled rich kid who thinks money makes you invincible? Let me tell you something. In a few years, your family will be bankrupt." With those words, even Ethan's father, standing nearby, turned livid. Finally, Ethan stormed out of the room in a rage, and Khloe, after a moment, chased after him, perhaps to continue the argument. This left just my family members in the tense hospital room. My dad was extremely anxious, nervously rubbing his hands together. "Khloe, why did you have to provoke Ethan like that?" My dad had recently started a small business venture that relied heavily on connections and resources from Ethan's family. Now, with Khloe having alienated them so thoroughly, his business prospects looked bleak. Khloe frowned impatiently. "Dad, don't be so short-sighted. Business is just business." She looked at Mark lying in the bed as if he were a priceless treasure. "With Mark," she said softly, full of conviction, "we'll eventually have everything we could ever want." In the days that followed, my parents were consumed with dealing with the fallout from Ethan's family, who were now actively making things difficult for my father's business. Khloe spent her time fussing over Mark at the hospital, reinforcing their bond, and I focused intently on my studies and my budding investment activities. Everyone, it seemed, had their own version of a bright future to pursue. One afternoon, when Khloe came home briefly to make soup for Mark, she found me diligently working on my homework at the kitchen table. "Study hard," she sneered dismissively. "Study all you want. Even if you get into the best university, you'll just end up working for someone else your whole life." I ignored her comment, keeping my attention fixed on my books. In my last life, Being forced into marriage with Mark meant I never had the chance to attend college properly. I eventually earned a degree through adult education programs, but it always felt like a significant part of my youth was missing. Khloe couldn't understand that not every action is motivated solely by money. Money is a tool, a means to achieve happiness, but it isn't happiness itself. For example, I deeply desired the experience of 4 years on a university campus, having a genuine, uncomplicated campus romance, gossiping late into the night with roommates, debating future possibilities, grabbing late-night snacks after club meetings. These were simple joys I had never known in my previous life. After Khloe left with her soup, I met up with my sister-in-law, Maya. She had the lower part of her face covered with a silk scarf, and I had pulled my baseball cap down low. We probably looked like we were involved in some clandestine activity. "I've been following your instructions exactly, buying and selling," Maya reported nervously. "This money, it's yours." She handed me a bank book. To my surprise, besides the initial $2,000 I had given her, she had deposited all the profits I had earned back into the account. "What are you doing?" I asked, pushing the bank book back towards her. "This profit was generated using your initial investment. That makes it your money. I should only be taking a small percentage as a commission." Maya waved my hand away firmly. "I didn't do anything. Why should I take the money? I just lent you $2,000, and now you've basically returned it. I can't keep the profits. That would be wrong." We argued back and forth for a while, but she refused to budge. "All right, here's the deal then," I finally proposed. "I'll hire you." She looked puzzled. "Hire me? For what?" "I need to focus on preparing for my college entrance exams soon," I explained. "So, I'll need help managing a lot of these investment details. Plus, I can't legally open my own trading account until I turn 18, so I'll still need to use yours for a while. You absolutely deserve a commission for handling all of this." She started to wave dismissively again. "We're family." I grabbed her hand gently but firmly. "And when I graduate from college, I plan to start my own business. I hope you'll agree to be my BD." She looked completely confused. "What's BD?" "Business development," I clarified. "You're naturally outgoing. You're great at talking to people. Everyone likes you, and you have a real talent for networking. I genuinely think this kind of role would suit you perfectly." Before Maya could respond, we heard sounds coming from the front door of my house nearby. It was Khloe and Mark returning. We exchanged a quick, understanding glance and separated silently. This had become our routine. We now had a significant amount of money, and keeping it safe and secret was crucial. Until I was strong enough and independent, no one else could know about our financial success. I went home alone and could hear Khloe and Mark chatting happily in her bedroom. Mark's voice carried an unmistakable excitement, the sound of someone who believes they are on the verge of greatness. "Mr. Allen said the other applicants were just average," Mark boasted. "But not me. He saw right away that I was different, that I wasn't ordinary. He decided he's going to teach me everything he knows about investing." Khloe sounded ecstatic. "Oh, Mark, I knew this day would come." Sitting in the kitchen, I peeled an apple and took a bite. "Ah, Mr. Allen." Now I understood. In my previous life, Khloe attended a regular university prep course funded by our parents. She never crossed paths with this Mr. Allen. But I did. This Mr. Allen character always dressed impeccably in three-piece suits, possessed a magnetic personality, and delivered captivating speeches about achieving financial freedom through his unique methods. Allen's persona perfectly matched Khloe's expectations. Mark started as a directionless young man, but somehow became the multi-billionaire Q god. In Khloe's mind, such a dramatic transformation must involve some secret training or guidance from an extraordinary expert. And now, Khloe believed she had found that miracle worker in Mr. Allen. "Tomorrow, we'll go see Mr. Allen again," Khloe continued enthusiastically. "Mark, you just focus on studying hard with him. Don't worry about anything else." Mark sounded slightly troubled. "But what about the $60,000 apprenticeship fee?" "I'll figure out a way to get it," Khloe said firmly. I almost bit into the core of my apple. I already knew Khloe wasn't the sharpest tool in the shed, but I hadn't realized just how naive she could be. If she could rationalize all her past life's failures by blaming them solely on choosing the wrong man, Ethan, then it followed that she would blindly trust that her path to success now lay in paying a hefty $60,000 fee to a smooth-talking stranger named Alan. I encountered Mr. Allen in my previous life. Back then, Mark had been thrilled after meeting him, begging me to let him follow Allen to learn his secrets to wealth. I stopped him. Even though I was young and relatively inexperienced myself at that point, something about Allen felt fundamentally wrong. If someone truly possessed the secret to making vast amounts of money easily, why would they spend their time trying to teach it to others, and why would someone supposedly so wealthy need to charge a $60,000 apprenticeship fee? Mark had called me narrow-minded and lacking vision back then. He argued that I was underestimating Alan's generosity. Alan wasn't interested in the money, Mark insisted. He genuinely wanted to help people like them become rich. The $60,000 fee? That was just a way to filter applicants, Mark explained. A test to gauge their commitment. In the end, because I refused to provide the funds, Mark went to Alan on his own. He didn't have the fee, but surprisingly, Alan didn't make a fuss and agreed to take him under his wing anyway. This only made Mark admire him even more. They left together, heading south, and I didn't hear from Mark for over a year. When I finally did see him again, he had managed to escape from a pyramid scheme operation and called me, crying desperately for help. "Sarah, save me!" Hearing Khloe and Mark now, heading straight towards the same fate with Alan, I did feel a tiny flicker of pity for them. That night, I overheard Khloe talking to my mother in the living room. "Mom, Sarah turns 18 this weekend. I think it's time she started dating. Mark knows a wealthy older gentleman. He's quite a bit older, yes, but he's willing to pay an $18,000 bride price up front. You know our family is struggling financially right now? Dad's business is gone. And Mark has this amazing opportunity with Mr. Allen, but he needs $60,000. So maybe we could arrange for Sarah to meet this man? If for no other reason than the bride price, it would really help us out." So that was Khloe's brilliant plan to raise the $60,000. Sell me off. Any lingering trace of pity I might have felt vanished completely. "Go right ahead, Khloe, ruin yourselves. I found myself actually looking forward to watching you dig your own grave." Sure enough, on my 18th birthday, my family did something highly unusual. They bought me a birthday cake decorated with cream frosting. My present was a simple new dress. My parents made me twirl around in front of the mirror, offering rare praise. "Sarah is really blossoming into a beautiful young woman now that she's 18. Even Khloe chimed in with feigned admiration. "Yes, Sarah is so cute, and she does so well in her studies. Wealthy men really appreciate that combination." My parents then smoothly transitioned the conversation to the topic of me dating the man Khloe had mentioned. "Yes, he's a few years older," Mom admitted casually. "Thanks, Mom. He's 47 and I'm 18. But he's very nice. Older men tend to be more considerate, you know." "Thanks again." His two previous wives divorced him because they couldn't endure his domestic violence. Internally, I was seething, but outwardly, I managed a sweet smile. "Okay. Thank you, Mom, Dad, and Khloe for worrying about my future. I'm willing to go on the blind date, but my college entrance exams are starting very soon. Can we maybe arrange the meeting after my exams are finished?" My parents and Khloe hadn't expected me to be so cooperative. They were clearly very pleased with my response. Later that night, I overheard them talking amongst themselves. "See? I bet Sarah knows she can't find anyone decent on her own. Once she heard he was rich, she was definitely willing." I sneered silently while continuing to review my study notes. Before I knew it, the week of the college entrance exams arrived. Since I hadn't been forced into an early marriage with Mark in this lifetime, I was able to participate fully. I had always been a strong student academically, so when I finished the last exam and handed in my paper, I felt a quiet confidence about my performance. After leaving the examination hall, I didn't head home. Instead, I went straight to a small, clean hotel in the city center. My sister-in-law, Maya, was already waiting for me there. "Here's everything you asked for," she said, handing me a brand new suitcase. Inside were clothes suitable for travel in a new city, a basic laptop computer, a simple mobile phone, and essential toiletries, all purchased according to the list I had given her. I had no intention of ever going back to my parents' house. You know, Maya said hesitantly, if you just leave like this, your parents will probably lose their minds. I took the suitcase handle firmly. Even if they do lose their minds, it will only be because they lost the $18,000 bride price, not because they lost me. I looked at Maya earnestly. Come with me, Maya. This summer, I'm heading to a city filled with opportunities. You can be my BD just like we talked about. We can make a lot of money together. Maya's hands, roughened from years of housework, nervously clenched the edges of her apron. I could see the fear in her eyes. After a long pause, she sighed heavily. Sarah, you go. You're destined for bigger things than this town. I can't do it. Maya said goodbye to me and walked away, heading back towards her home. She cried silently the entire way. She hated herself, though she couldn't quite articulate what exactly she hated. She had never been a brave person. She had spent her entire life following the orders of others. When her parents told her to quit school, she quit. When they told her to dedicate her life to taking care of her younger brother, she became his surrogate mother. When they told her to marry my cousin so they could collect the bride price needed for her brother's wedding, she married a man who hit her. Whatever her husband told her to do, she did, without question. Everyone she knew seemed to live the same way, accepting their lot without resistance. The only person who had ever encouraged her to resist, to imagine a different life, was me, a girl who had just turned 18. Girls that age often possess a kind of naive courage. But Maya hadn't felt courageous even as a little girl, and now, feeling older, she felt she had even less courage left. Maya arrived back at her house. It was, as usual, a mess. Her husband lay sprawled on their thin mattress surrounded by empty liquor bottles. As soon as she stepped through the door, an empty bottle flew past her head, shattering against the doorframe. Splinters of glass grazed her cheek. Home so late? Trying to starve me to death? These kinds of greetings were a daily occurrence. Maya lowered her head and went silently into the small kitchen area to prepare dinner. She began chopping vegetables on the worn wooden cutting board, the rhythmic thudding sound loud in the small space. She tried to use the noise to drown out her husband's continued stream of curses and insults drifting from the other room, but his words still flooded her ears. You don't work. You don't bring in any money. You eat my food. Sleep in my house. So you damn well better take care of me properly. And don't give me any more excuses about that cyst problem the doctor found. I'm telling you, if you don't give me a son this year, I'll break both your legs. Maya continued chopping the vegetables, her movements becoming faster, more forceful. A strange, unfamiliar warmth began to spread through her chest. She remembered many things in that moment. She remembered the savings account that held $10,000. Money I had insisted she keep from our initial investment profits, while her husband begrudged her even the $1,000 a month he gave her for household expenses, constantly accusing her of mismanaging it. Maya remembered my words. Maya, awakening can be a long, slow process, but sometimes it happens in a single, sudden moment. We all think if we just endure things a little longer, life will somehow work itself out. But often, it doesn't. There will come a moment when you just think, I'm done. And in that moment, you'll step into a completely new world. Maya was chopping potatoes when her husband yelled again from the other room. Is dinner ready yet? What the hell are you doing in there taking so long? Trying to starve me? Running around town all day, maybe I should tie you up with a dog leash like you deserve. Suddenly, Maya slammed the heavy kitchen knife down onto the cutting board with a loud crack. Screw this, she said, her voice low but clear. It was a peculiar afternoon. Maya's husband abruptly saw his usually docile wife rush out of the kitchen, still wielding the large chopping knife, screaming, "Screw this! I'm done!" Maya ran out of the house. She left everything behind. The home she had meticulously tried to maintain, her abusive marriage, her connection to her original family who had sold her. She didn't look back even once. She ran down the dusty road towards the edge of town. Ahead of her, the sun was setting in a stunning display of color. But Maya had a strong, certain feeling. She was running towards a new world. Just as I was checking out of the hotel, preparing to head to the train station, Maya ran up to me. She had lost one of her worn slippers, her hair was disheveled, and she was still wearing her cooking apron. She reached me, completely out of breath. "Sarah," she gasped, "I've made up my mind. I'm coming with you." "Okay," I said calmly, "but maybe put the knife down first." On the day she finally said goodbye to her old world, my sister-in-law Maya had indeed been chopping vegetables in her kitchen. In her frantic rush to leave, she had forgotten to put the knife down. Luckily, the sight of her wielding the large kitchen knife had apparently shocked her violent husband into silence, preventing him from trying to stop her and allowing her to escape safely. I bought Maya a new pair of comfortable shoes, and then we purchased her train ticket alongside mine. As we waited to board, she kept looking at me, her eyes shining with a newfound brightness. "Sarah, you mentioned making me a BD. What do I need to learn? Even though I'm older, I can still learn anything." I corrected her gently. "Maya, you're not old. At 25, you still have plenty of time for everything." "Yes," she repeated, her voice cheerful. "There's still time. Sarah, I think I can be a really great BD." "It's okay," I smiled. "Starting is always the most important step. The future gives us plenty of time to figure things out." The train began to move, pulling away from the station and heading down the tracks. Outside the window, the setting sun painted the landscape in shades of gold and orange. Beside me, my sister-in-law was excitedly studying a basic English vocabulary book I had bought her. I leaned my head against the cool window pane, gazing out at the endless scenery rushing past. The next 10 years, I knew, were poised to be a decade of incredible growth and soaring success in many sectors. Opportunities were everywhere. I felt ready. This time, I was determined only to do better, achieve more than before. I saw Khloe again 3 years later. She and Mark had recently been rescued from the compound of a pyramid scheme organization and were giving statements at the local police station. Since I was listed as a family relative, the police contacted me to come in. When I saw Khloe again, I almost didn't recognize her. Although only 3 years had passed, she looked as if she had aged 20. Streaks of gray were already visible in her hair, and deep worry lines were etched between her eyebrows. Mark, beside her, was hunched over, his eyes darting around nervously with a sly, defeated look. He had gone, I thought, from being a small-time potential crook to looking like an old, worn-out one. Khloe couldn't recognize me at first either. I wore a simple silk dress, no obvious logos, but the quality of the fabric spoke of its expense. My skin, once sallow and dull, was now fair and smooth. My hair, once limp and yellowish, was now thick, jet black, and silky, cascading casually over my shoulders. The car that had brought me to the police station was the familiar Rolls-Royce from my past life. A driver in pristine white gloves held the door open for me, and 2 discreet bodyguards in dark suits followed silently behind me. Khloe stared, stunned, as I sat down across from her in the interview room. "No, impossible," she whispered. I feigned mild confusion. "What's impossible?" You didn't marry Mark. Mark is mine." Chloe's voice suddenly became hoarse and screeching. How are you rich?" I frowned slightly, affecting impatience. "It's been 3 years since we last saw each other, Khloe, and this is how you greet me? When did I ever try to take Mark away from you? He's definitely all yours, rest assured." My tone was deliberately cold. I already knew through various channels what had transpired over the past 3 years. Right after the college entrance exams, I had disappeared. My parents couldn't find me, so the arranged marriage with the older man naturally fell through. To raise the $60,000 needed for Mark's apprenticeship fee with Mr. Allen, Khloe had resorted to taking out high-interest loans from questionable sources. She firmly believed that investing in Mark was a sure bet, and no amount of interest could possibly outweigh the massive future wealth she expected him to generate. Then, one wrong step inevitably led to another. Utterly devoted to the charismatic Mr. Allen, they followed him south, only to end up trapped in the pyramid scheme's headquarters. They were subjected to psychological control, occasional beatings, and their freedom was severely restricted. During that time, Khloe reportedly drove herself nearly crazy, constantly demanding of Mark, "Did you experience this in your past life too?" But Mark, of course, hadn't been reborn. He had no past life memories to share and couldn't provide the answers she desperately sought. Now, facing me, Khloe seemed to be struggling intensely to understand where things had gone wrong. After a long, tense silence, a strange, unsettling smile spread across her face. "I get it now," she said, her voice raspy. "You just memorized all the stocks Mark bought in the last life, didn't you? And you replicated his trades this time around. That's how you did it." I idly played with the smooth jade ring on my finger, not bothering to correct her absurd assumption. Honestly, with that level of intelligence, she really wasn't worth engaging with. Presented with the incredible opportunity of a second chance at life, she could have at least tried to remember some winning lottery numbers or significant predictable events. But no, her entire focus remained obsessively fixed on Mark. "Doesn't matter," Khloe muttered, more to herself than to me. "Mark escaped from that place. He can start buying stocks again later. Sarah, you just wait and see. This lifetime, I will definitely end up living better than you." And so, after leaving the police station, Khloe somehow managed to borrow even more money from various sources, scraping together enough capital for Mark to start trading stocks. "But I don't know anything about this stuff," Mark protested, clearly perplexed by her unwavering confidence in him. "Don't worry," Khloe reassured him intensely. "You're Q God. You have the intuition. Just buy whatever feels right." Mark had no idea what Q God meant, but listening to Khloe's constant flattery combined with reading a few sensationalized online stories about people getting rich quick in the stock market, he started to get caught up in the fantasy. He began to believe that maybe his turn for greatness had finally arrived. So he invested the borrowed money. Initially, purely by chance, he actually made some profits. Khloe was overjoyed, convinced this was the start of their fortune. They quickly reinvested everything, pouring all their capital back into the market. Then, an unprecedented market crash occurred, wiping out countless investors. Wendy stared at their account statement in disbelief. She gripped Mark's hand tightly. "It's okay, Mark, you're Q God. We can definitely make a comeback. This is just a temporary setback." They decided to get a good night's sleep and formulate a new plan in the morning. The next morning, Mark woke up first. He rubbed his eyes and turned to Khloe, who was still asleep beside him. "I had the strangest dream," he began, his voice filled with lingering confusion. "In my dream. It felt so real, like it was my past life or something. You know, back when Sarah and I were in that equipment room, in the dream, you didn't burst in. So, Sarah and I ended up getting married. Later, you went off to study somewhere and married that rich kid, Ethan. I stayed behind in our hometown with Sarah. That guy, Alan, showed up, and I really wanted to become his apprentice, learn how to get rich. But Sarah wouldn't let me. She said he was a scammer. I didn't listen, went behind her back anyway, and got tricked into that pyramid scheme just like what actually happened to us. Years later, I escaped, and Sarah came to bail me out. By then, she was incredibly wealthy. She said she didn't really want anything to do with me, but if I still wanted to follow her, I'd have to work for her. She made me do all these interviews with newspapers and magazines. They took my picture and called me Q God. I just agreed and repeated the lines Sarah told me to say. Honestly, I didn't understand any of it. I was just her shield, I guess. All the people who hated Q God or lost money tried to take it out on me. I got beaten up badly a few times. I knew Sarah hated me deep down. This was probably her way of punishing me for what happened back in school. But I didn't dare leave her or tell anyone the truth, because I was terrified Sarah wouldn't take care of me anymore, and then I'd just be a complete loser with nothing. Mark finished recounting his vivid dream and noticed Khloe's face looked absolutely dreadful, pale and distorted. He waved his hand uncertainly in front of her eyes. "Hey, are you mad at me?" he asked, trying to coax her. "Because I dreamt about being with your sister? Are you jealous? Don't worry, I definitely love you the most now." Mark mumbled on, still trying to process the dream himself. But wow, that dream was just so detailed, wasn't it? It felt like... Before Mark could finish his sentence, Khloe let out a high-pitched, piercing scream. She started tearing at her own hair, shrieking like someone completely unhinged, and then began banging her head repeatedly against the wall. Mark tried to grab her but wasn't quick enough. Khloe collapsed unconscious. So when your sister woke up, she was like this, the doctor explained quietly. In the sterile room of the mental hospital, I watched the woman sitting on the bed before me. She had completely lost touch with reality. One moment she was laughing foolishly to herself. The next she was bursting into uncontrollable tears. I gave up so much, she sobbed incoherently. I'm supposed to be the female protagonist, the one who gets reborn. Rebirth heroines always rise to the top. They always win. Why didn't anything change for me? I asked Mark to step outside and sat down on the edge of the bed next to Khloe. You still don't understand, do you? I said softly, though I knew she likely couldn't comprehend. Rebirth itself isn't the useful part. What matters is the advantage of knowing things others don't, the changes in perspective and understanding that knowledge brings. You didn't gain any of that. You just repeated your old patterns. I paused, then added sincerely, but still, thank you for sending me back. I genuinely appreciate it. Because of you, I've managed to live a very successful and fulfilling life this time around. Wendy stared blankly at me for a long moment. Then, suddenly, she screamed again, a raw, empty sound. Keep a close watch on her, I instructed the medical staff calmly. Don't let her harm herself. Then I turned and left the psychiatric hospital. Today, I had someone important I needed to meet. Tucked away deep in a winding alley was a small, unassuming shop with a quaint blue-tiled roof. A simple wooden sign hung by the door reading, Wish Shop. It looked like the kind of novelty store only middle school students might frequent. I pushed open the door and walked inside. A surprisingly handsome young man was dozing behind the narrow counter, comfortably hugging a large, fluffy yellow cat. Hearing the bell above the door chime, he immediately sat up straight. Welcome, he began, then paused for a moment, his eyes widening slightly as he recognized my face. Ah, sorry for the wait. What is your wish today? I smiled faintly. Let's drop the act. I know my sister received her chance at rebirth because of you in this place. It took me quite a while to track down this clue. This inconspicuous little shop apparently had a manager named Victor and an assistant manager named Alex, the young man before me. The information I had gathered was puzzling. Victor seemed to be just an ordinary college student, but I couldn't find any record or background information on Alex whatsoever. At that moment, Alex placed a steaming cup of herbal tea on the counter in front of me. I wasn't interested in drinking it. I got straight to the point. Name your price. I can pay whatever amount you require. I just have one request. Ensure that Khloe never gets another chance at rebirth. Yes, that was my primary objective now, to permanently block Khloe's path to potentially causing more chaos in yet another life. Alex looked genuinely taken aback for a moment, then he chuckled softly. You might have misunderstood the situation somewhat, he said gently. Our actual client wasn't Khloe, it was you. I frowned, confused. Time reversal is an extremely high-cost service, Alex explained. We only offer it to our most deserving potential customers. You were someone our organization identified and selected a long time ago. Then why didn't you approach me directly? I asked. Oh, we tried, Alex replied with a slight shrug. Many times, actually. We left flyers where you were likely to see them, sent carefully coded text messages, but you ignored every single attempt. It was entirely possible. In my previous life, I was incredibly busy, constantly buried in work. Even important emails often required my assistant's explicit reminder before I'd notice them. There was no way I would have paid attention to what likely appeared to be junk mail or spam advertisements. So, Alex continued, we eventually turned our attention to Khloe instead. She had a great deal of unresolved resentment and regret regarding her past, making her very receptive to our offer. She accepted readily. I raised an eyebrow. Did she know she was essentially being used as a means to reach me? Come now, used is such a strong word, Alex countered lightly, leaning back against the counter. Sunlight streamed through the shop window, casting a warm, golden glow on his features. Yes, we offered her the chance at rebirth. The stipulated cost for that service was that you had to be brought back along with her. All the terms and conditions were laid out clearly in the agreement, and she willingly consented. It was a straightforward business transaction. He paused, then added, "As for what happens after the rebirth, well, that's entirely beyond our control. Whether an individual manages to defy their previous fate or ends up making things even worse for themselves is purely a matter of their own capability and choices. We bear no responsibility for the outcomes, you see." "Then one last question," I said, meeting his gaze directly. "Why choose me in the first place?" "That's simple," Alex replied with a warm smile. "And you've already answered it quite effectively through your actions in this current life." He gestured towards a financial magazine lying open on the counter. There was a picture of Maya on the cover, smiling radiantly, a successful female entrepreneur. "This time around," Alex elaborated, "you significantly altered your investment strategies, shifting more focus towards supporting the real economy. Your ventures have created nearly 10,000 jobs so far and have driven important reforms in local manufacturing sectors." He tapped the magazine lightly. "Many individual lives have been profoundly changed for the better because of you. Like Maya's, for instance." He looked back at me. "She's no longer the woman destined to meet a tragic end due to domestic violence, as she did in your previous timeline. And there are many other women like Maya whose paths you've altered." Alex nodded thoughtfully. "From our perspective, it's proven to be a deal well worth the initial investment." Later, when Victor returned to the Wish shop, he found Alex rummaging around looking for something suitable to cover his cup of instant noodles while they steeped. "Want a bite?" Alex offered casually. Victor ignored the offer, opened his meticulous notebook, and began confirming the follow-up administrative details of their recently concluded case. Subject Khloe, projected lifetime confinement in psychiatric facility. Subject Mark, projected future includes chronic illness and homelessness. Subject Ethan, currently incarcerated for assault, father also serving sentence for related financial crimes. Victor noted the outcomes for these secondary figures. "However," he mused aloud, "none of this should significantly impact client Sarah's trajectory. These individuals failed to impede her progress in the last life, and they certainly couldn't in this one." He tapped his pen. "As client Sarah herself indicated, her future actions will likely lead even more individuals towards greater heights of success and well-being." Finished with his notes, Victor finally looked properly at the cup of noodles Alex was preparing. "What's that?" he asked, pointing not at the noodles but at the piece of paper Alex was about to place on top of the cup. "Instant noodles," Alex replied absently. "I asked if you wanted some." "No, I mean the thing beside the noodles," Victor clarified, his voice rising slightly. "The thing you almost used to wipe up that spilled soup." Alex glanced down, his eyes widening in belated horror. It was the check Sarah had left them as a thank you gesture, a check written for an extraordinarily large sum. He had, indeed, accidentally smeared some spilled noodle broth across the signature line. It definitely couldn't be cashed now. "Quick! Let me go back 10 minutes!" Victor exclaimed urgently. "Quickly, Alex!" "Victor," Alex sighed wearily, "that's really not how we're supposed to use our abilities." "Hurry up! Let me go back! That's over $50 million. A minor, localized temporal adjustment occurred within the small confines of the Wish shop. And outside, their next potential wealthy client was probably already making their way down the winding alley.